Here we're going to go through example 4 from lesson 6. And this example states that picloram, which is the active ingredient, can be applied to wheat at a rate of 0.25 ounces of acid equivalent per acre. Now, one really important thing to keep in mind here is this ounces is dry ounces, not fluid ounces. And so that's a really key distinction that you need to pay attention to when working with standard units. One of the biggest frustrations of using standard units instead of metrics is the idea that we use the same name for two very different units of measurement. So this is actually dry ounces of acid equivalent per acre. The product, the formulated product, Tordon 22K, contains the active ingredient picloram at a rate of 2 pounds of acid equivalent per gallon. And the question that we're being asked is how many acres of wheat can be treated with 1 gallon of Tordon 22K. So again, we're going to process this moving from what we know to what we need. And so the first thing we know is written in the very first statement is that we know that we want to apply 0.25 ounces of acid equivalent per acre. So we're going to write that again as a ratio, 0.25 ounces of acid equivalent per acre. And then again, because we know that we're going to need to get these in the same units. So we've got the first statement in ounces acid equivalent and the second in pounds of acid equivalent. We know that we're going to have to convert one way or the other. And so it probably makes more sense to move into pounds of acid equivalent. So that's what we're going to do in this next step. So we're going to enter in a unit conversion right away. And that unit conversion is 16 ounces of acid equivalent, because again, we're talking dry ounces here and not fluid ounces. There's 16 dry ounces in 1 pound of acid equivalent. So 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. So we're going to multiply our original by, again, this is a unit conversion, it equals to 1. And that allows us to cancel out these ounces of acid equivalent units, which then allows us to put in the other information we know, that Tordon 22K contains picloram at 2 pounds of acid equivalent per gallon. So we've already got pounds of acid equivalent in the numerator here, which means we probably want to put it in the denominator in this step. So 2 pounds of acid equivalent in 1 gallon of Tordon 22K. Okay, so again, we can cancel these units out now, pounds of acid equivalent. And what this is going to tell us then, if we just look at the units and ignore the numbers for the time being, is going to tell us that there's 1 gallon of Tordon 22K per acre. Okay, so that gives us the information in gallons per acre. But that isn't quite what we want for this particular problem. What we want is how many acres per gallon for this particular. So what we actually want is to switch these units. Instead of gallons per acre, for this particular example, we want acres per gallon, acres treated per gallon of product. So there's two ways that we could do this. One would be to actually multiply this through and get our 0.25 divided by 2 times 16. And then just basically take the inverse of that. So we could multiply this through and do 1 divided by whatever the answer is here. And that would give us the acres per gallon. But the other thing we can do, again, because all of these units are equivalent, if we flip the ratios the other direction, we can actually just set this problem up the other way. And so we can basically take each one of these ratios and express the numerator as the denominator and vice versa. And so we can know that on 1 acre, we want to apply 0.25 ounces of AE. We want to multiply that by 16 ounces of AE on 1 pound of AE. So again, that's our unit conversion. It equals 1. And we multiply that by 2 pounds of AE in every gallon of Tordon 22K. And so again, we get rid of the units that we don't need, ounces AE, pounds AE, and that gives us a unit of acres per gallon, which is what we want. So if we do that, we can take 16 times 2, which is 32 acres, divided by 0.25 times 1 times 1, which is 0.25 gallons. And so if we take 32 and divide that by 0.25, that gives us 128 acres per gallon of Tordon 22K if we use the application rate of 0.25 ounces of acid equivalent per acre. So this is our answer.